Welcome into the Week 12 edition of Betting Pros College Football Look Ahead. I'm Chris Welsh. You can find me on Twitter at @IsItTheWelsh, and joined, as always, by the one, the great, the only, mixing all the things up together, he's Thor Nystrom. You can find Thor on, Thor Nystrom. You can find Thor on Twitter at ThorKU. Thor, what's up, buddy? What's up,
How you doing? How you doing, Welsh? Yeah, I appreciate that, man. After the Vikings game we just watched, I'm on cloud nine, so I'm excited to talk about the next week of college football as well. It's been a lot of good football recently, and we're going to get more of it coming up here.
You know what? The only thing to mention, though, we were talking about the Vikings-Bills game. Justin Jefferson's catch, one of the best catches I think we've ever seen, but also one of the craziest games, NFL or college aside, that neither one of us have ever seen. And then you cited that. And I think that's a big thing for you to cite, that never seen anything like that, even in the college ranks, where this is the type of stuff. What happened with a on the 1 yard line fumble in the end zone, Minnesota falls on it for a touchdown with like barely any time left? That's college type of stuff that happens. And that happened in the NFL.
Yeah, and then the botch snap on the other side from the inch line, and then the Vikings recover, and then the Bills go down and they force overtime by kicking the field goal, and then the Vikings get the field. They probably should have gotten the touchdown in the first drive of overtime, get the field goal, and then the Bills were driving down. They had their shot and throw the interception at the end. It was absolutely wild. I was talking to a couple friends afterwards because it was like, when is the last regular season NFL game that was watched like that? And none of us could put a finger on it. And so then I started wondering, when's the last time I seen a college game like that? But it's like, when have you seen a college game that were with the botched 4th and inches from the goal line to go ahead, and then the other team fumbles it, the other team recovers, and then the craziness in overtime? I just cannot place in my mind the last time I've seen a game like that at any level. So pretty wild.
Yeah, and as I said to you, I said it gives you hope that you're like, oh yeah, I haven't seen everything in sports yet. I haven't seen everything in football yet, especially with so much with the NFL to college. I haven't seen it all. And last week we did see a whole bunch in the top 5. No change as far as the top 25 in the AP voting. No change, but the bottom half of the 10 is all completely new. It looks like LSU jumped up to 6, USC moved up to 7, Alabama's got the 8 spot, Clemson with the 9, and Utah jumped up to 10. And we've got obviously games and matchups with all of those. Any major takeaway from last week, whether it's on, obviously the betting side is probably the most important. I definitely cashed on Tennessee, but any major takeaways as far as some of the big rank changes or anything that happened last week?
The big one, it was TCU. I mean, like it's got to be the headliner. Like, nobody expected them to. I mean, very few people expected them to beat Texas. Very few people expected them to cover against Texas. Nobody, literally nobody, expected them to win in that way, right? Like, every path you would have conceived for a TCU upset in that spot, it involved a shootout. So you look up at the scoreboard and Texas being blanked. Into the game or whatever, and you're like, wow, the defensive performance for TCU was absolutely fabulous, and they just found another way to win. There's been happenstance in some of the games. Some of the games they've won these wild shootouts, and then in this one, their defense shows up and absolutely shuts down Quinn Ewers and Bijan Robinson. Shutting down Quinn Ewers is a little bit easier, like, at this time, because he's just not very experienced yet. He's got all the arm talent and everything like that. But we've seen other teams do that. To shut out the lights on Bijan Robinson like the TCU defense did, that was pretty crazy. So for me, that would be the headline of that. The other one is the door's wide open as far as the playoff goes. I mean, this thing is still up in the air, and there's several spots that could still change. So it sets up for a fascinating final 2 weeks of college football.
Yeah, and on the TCU side, I mean, you brought up Bijan. That was like the big focal point. So for them to do that, it really set the stage. And like, how often do you also see top 10 teams as a touchdown dog? I mean, how often do you see that? Not that often. And
it was the biggest underdog of an undefeated team this late in the season against a 3-loss team in the history of college football. That's what's crazy about it too. Like I said, everybody in the market was expecting Texas to cover, If not, they would not have been 7-point favorites in that game, and TCU overcame that as well, as they've overcome everything else.
Wild week. Well, hopefully week 12 has got a whole bunch more and maybe some non-sweats as far as bets go. That's what we're obviously and ultimately hoping for. So this is going to be the early look, the very early look ahead look. You guys can obviously get more during the week if you are subscribed to this channel and obviously over at Betting Pros. So make sure you do so you get all of the info so you can get some of those early lines before things start changing. But let's talk about some action that's going to jump in a little bit early in the week. Let's focus really quickly just on the Tuesday action because this is going to come up real quick. There are two games up, and then we'll jump over to the Wednesday ones where we've got Bowling Green at Toledo, a 7-3 Toledo, 5-5 Bowling Green. The line I currently see out there is Toledo favored by 15. I think you're going to have something to say about that. And then we've got Ohio at Ball State. Ball State, the Tuesday Maction champion here that we keep talking on them. Ball State 5-5, Ohio 7-3, and Ohio favored by 4. So what do we got on these two games? Are there any good leans early on for Tuesday Maction?
Yeah, as far as my numbers go, we have a tale of two different games here where one of them, it was the rare occurrence where my number, when I was, I run my numbers early on Sunday and then the circle lines come out Sunday afternoon. So rarely is my number exactly spot on to the, 10th of the decimal to what the Vegas number is. That happened in the Ohio State Ball State game. My line on that was Ohio minus 3.5 at Ball State. That's what the Vegas number is as well. Ohio minus 3.5. Whereas the Toledo one, this is what you were referring to. It opened at 15.5. Now it's down to 15. My line on that game is Toledo minus 18.7. When Daquan Finn was out before, Toledo's quarterback, the market had adjusted their lines down. Daquan Finn returned last week, and maybe Toledo didn't look as explosive as people thought, but he's back now, and he should be healthier for this coming game. So my line on that game is Toledo minus 18.7. So I'm showing almost a 4-point discrepancy in that one. Definitely lean Toledo in that one. And then the other one, my system is literally showing zero value whatsoever, but I would lean in that one, the home team taking the home dog with Ball State. I think they can do a couple things here that's going to give Ohio trouble. Ohio has one of the best offenses in the MAC, and at this point, they're moving in on one of the better offenses of the G5. It's really hard to stop what they do on offense, but their defense is the exact opposite. They just have a classic Matador defense. Any team that with any sort of a pulse can move the ball on them. This Ball State team, they're not explosive whatsoever on offense, but they are efficient because they have that sideline-to-sideline passing game with Paddock. He gets the ball out faster than any quarterback in the NCAA. Not looking to throw downfield. That's not what they want to do. It's just the quick hitting stuff. Ohio can't tackle on the perimeter. They also can't tackle between the tackles, and that's a real problem when you're facing Carson Steele coming up here. Carson Steele is not only one of the nation's highest graded, or one of the highest graded running backs in America by PFF. He also has broken almost as many tackles as anybody. Like, he's in the top 6 or 7 on that. I haven't checked the updated for this week, but he's certainly in the top 10 for broken tackles. One of the toughest guys in America to tackle. I think those two things could give Ohio a little bit of trouble, forcing guys to tackle either in space on the perimeter or bring down the running back Carson Steele that I compare to Tim Riggins from Friday Night Lights for anyone that watched that show. And then on defense, Ball State is one of the better defenses in the MAC. So I think the way that Ball State plays, it matches up well with the Bobcats in this game. So I'd be leaning towards taking the home dog with that one.
On both those teams, by the way, Ohio, when we talked to Ohio and Toledo, 5-1 in the MAC right now, best in the MAC. If we go on over to Wednesday, we've got a 3-game slate here for Maction. We've got Eastern Michigan coming to Kent State. Kent State looking like a touchdown favorite. Miami, Ohio is going to Northern Illinois. Northern Illinois is a 2.5-point home favorite. And then we've got Western Michigan going up against Central Michigan. Central Michigan, a 10-point favorite, so double digits here. So if we're looking for some action on Wednesday, what is an early lean for you for that action?
The Eastern Michigan Kent State game is interesting because earlier this season, I mean, basically ever since when Kent State played Georgia, we've seen inflated lines in however you want to say it, in favor of Kent State or against Kent State, depending on if you're betting or not. But the Kent State's almost getting attacks every single week where you're seeing a discrepancy of 3 or 4 points in the marketplace. and a lot of, like, I had faded Kent State multiple times and won money. Last week I didn't, and I stayed away. Kent State ended up blowing out their opponent in that game, and so it wasn't a surprise to me to turn around and see a bit of a tax on this one as well. My line on that game is Kent State minus 4.3. It opened at 6 or 6.5, and now, like you said, it's up to 7. I'd be leaning towards Eastern Michigan in that game. I'm going to do a little bit more handicapping on it. You want to get the pulse on both sides, but I do think that there's value on Eastern Michigan there. Kent State, though, you do have to consider that their offense appears to have started to roll. And once that offense gets going, it's really hard to stop because they run at such high tempo, and they can both pass and run. So they keep you off the scent of what they're doing. But my early lean on that one would be EMU. The Northern Illinois, Miami of Ohio game. Northern Illinois, they've had all those injuries and stuff like that, and it's been a super duper inconsistent team. And it's one of those teams where you don't know the statuses of some of the players, like heading into the game, where you get surprise starts, surprise inactives, everything like that. So you want to check in on that, as far as that goes. I do like this Miami of Ohio team, though. So that's a game that I'm going to be investigating a little bit more. My line on that game is Northern Illinois minus 3.3. So, my system's showing a little bit of value on Northern Illinois. I'm not sure I'm going to take it, though, because I do like this Miami of Ohio team since their quarterback, Brett Gabbert, came back. And then the other one, the Central Michigan, Western Michigan game. That one for me, it's Welsh. Did you say the line on that one? It's not up to
10. Yeah, I got it. I see it at 10, and I see that because your line versus the early line you put looks like there's some probably significant movement.
Significant, yeah. I mean, that line opened at 6.5, so that thing has jumped up really quick. That's one where it hurts my heart to hear because I was definitely going to be leaning towards Central Michigan. My adjusted line in that game is Central Michigan minus 8.2. Getting up to 10, that makes it harder. Where the line opened at 6.5, that's absolutely I'm taking Central Michigan in that one. With it getting to 10, it becomes a little bit more precarious. Here's the deal with this one. Western Michigan stinks. That team is so far down. They seem to have division even within the team with the coaches, stuff like that, beyond the talent that had left. Last year, these last couple of years, you had like Caleb Elby throwing to Sky Moore. You had a super explosive offense, stuff like that. Those guys are all gone. The defense has gotten bad. They can't do a whole lot. I mean, their offensive line stinks. Quarterback stinks this year. The one thing they had was they had these two good running backs coming back. Jefferson, we got to check on his status because he missed the last game. But that was all they had. So on offense, really nothing. And then on defense, all they have is the defensive line. It's really the only positive of this team outside of their running back room. They can create a little bit of havoc in the defensive front, but you go beyond that, and their defense stinks. What I like about Central Michigan right now is they turned it over to Bert Emanuel Jr. at quarterback, who they wanted to retain the red shirt on this kid. Seems like Jim McElwain knew what he had in him. He got unleashed. Bert Emanuel Jr. got unleashed in action last week. And boy, is that kid explosive. He is going to be a real handful for MAC defenses these next several years. But like I said, it's tough with where that number, getting at 10, that's where it becomes more of a tough one. But for me, I'm not betting Western Michigan in that spot at all. I don't really care what the line is. So for me, that one would be Central Michigan or pass.
Well, maybe you guys have got your Maction set and you're going to put a bunch of wagers down and you want to track all those wagers. Well, if you want to track them all, you can do it with Betting Pros Pick Tracker at bettingpros.com/pick-tracking. It syncs up with your sports books to tally which picks hit and which miss, which hopefully none do, and gives you a live look at what the public is doing so you can use real-time tracking to determine which plays to make and which to fade. Get on the leaderboard and quickly become a sharp by using the free advice we have to offer over at bettingpros.com/pick-tracking. You got it. Bettingpros.com pick tracking. Go and pick it up today. Get all your bets in, especially those Maction bets. You can get them all in one place. All right, let's talk about, let's get into some of the ranked games. We have one ranked game during the week, and it's on Thursday. We've got SMU coming up against Tulane. Tulane's 8-2 right now. They're 21st in the nation. And you're going to be coming off of some action betting. This is your one ranked game before Saturday. So what do you got here, Thor?
Yeah, what's the live line on this one?
All right, so the line I've got here is Tulane -3 at home. Ranked Tulane
Yeah,
-3 at home.
it's kind of interesting. My line in that game is Tulane -4.7. Especially with where that line is, I'm absolutely leaning towards Tulane in that game. It seems like that's come down a little bit because Tulane lost on Saturday to UCF. They kept it, close, but they didn't cover. They didn't win. They lost by a touchdown. And then SMU, they beat South Florida last time out. SMU should not have covered that South Florida game. By the way, that was one of the worst beats I've taken all year. Where South Florida had gotten down by 18, I had plus 17.5, but they wanted to go for 2 at the end. They didn't get the 2-point conversion, lost by 18. But SMU, they have the explosive offense for sure, but Tulane sort of has a trump card here because their defense is one of the best in the G5, and they can oppose you both against the run and the pass. And Tulane's offense, they can also do both things and be multiple. I see SMU as more of a one-trick pony, and I think that Tulane can address that trick. I like Tulane, especially with where that line is, and I would take it at 3. On the off chance that it moves up to 3.5 or 4, I would want that at 3.
Is it a little fishy at all that it's a home ranked only by a field goal favorite, or do you think that's SMU's offense coming into play?
Yeah, I don't personally, because, a couple weeks ago, SMU dropped 77 points on Houston. Last week, at least by the scoreboard, they won by 18 or whatever. So it looks like SMU, from, just sort of looking over the stuff like that, they're ascending and they're playing well or whatever. Whereas Tulane last week, some people trusted them at home against UCF, and then they ended up losing. But to me, that's what's informing, what's basically a 1.5 at the line value. I think it's just perceptual based on what happened these past couple of days. And I'm going to take advantage of that and bet on Tulane.
All right, we'll move over to Saturday where we've got all the good action. Number 1, Georgia. They're 10-0. They're going to be facing off against Kentucky in an SEC matchup, who's 6-4. Georgia's coming off a 45-19 win over Mississippi State. SEC action, Georgia. Is there a Georgia bet for us here, Thor?
Man, it would be hard to bet Kentucky at this point. We've seen Will Levis now in a couple big spots and a couple small spots. And Vanderbilt should not have been a big spot, and he has struggled mightily. The Vanderbilt game was where I was like really expecting Levis to have like the sort of resurgent game, and you put up video game numbers against this crappy defense. Obviously, that did not happen. The rest of the Kentucky offense, once we get to draft season, I'm not going to accept from people the idea that Will Levis did not have talent around him. Chris Rodriguez is a fabulous running back, and he helps keep them out of the 3rd and long situations that Levis doesn't want to be in. But Levis is just struggling right now. He's struggling with his decision-making. He's struggling with his placement. He's struggling with his accuracy. All the tools are there for sure. So if you got the A+ Will Levis game here, like the Anthony Richardson game against Utah. Yeah, Kentucky's going to cover, but it's like, what are the odds of that? And if not, Georgia's going to be able to shut down. Yeah, Georgia's nasty front 7. They're going to be able to address Rodriguez. So the path for Kentucky, it all goes through Levis. And anyone that's watched Levis this year would be a little bit concerned about that. I'm not showing a ton of line value on this. My line in that game is Georgia minus 21.6. But for me, that would have to be Georgia or pass.
Yeah, and it looks like the line's already moved up to 22.5 is what I'm seeing.
Not
right
a surprise.
Georgia. Yeah, so it's probably not something you're going to want to jump in early or maybe whatsoever. All right, so let's move to the next game where you've got number 2 Ohio State, also 10-0, coming up against Maryland, who's 6-4. Ohio State is coming off of a 56-14 win over Indiana. And I saw this over on ESPN on one of their article setups on the top 25, so I don't want to take credit for it, but I thought this was interesting. Ohio State has won its past 2 games against Maryland, who they're obviously facing, by a combined score of 139-31. Those are the past 2 games Ohio State has put up on Maryland. So number 2 Ohio State, you've got Maryland, who's 6-4, and this matchup shows I see a minus 27.5, so 27.5 favorite to OSU right now. So Thor, what do you think?
Hard lean towards the home dog here. I don't trust that Ohio State team at all. I think they're ripe for a bad spot. I'm not saying that, I don't know that Maryland's going to give them the scare here. I think where Ohio State is going to take their loss, it's against Michigan. But this team has a lot of flaws, and they're starting to come to the fore. This past week, you had Travion Henderson get injured, and Mayan Williams. He also got injured, Travion Henderson didn't play in the game. Then Mayan Williams gets hurt. I've been talking all year about the dearth of running back depth at Ohio State, and like this team cannot afford to have either Travion or Mayan get injured, and now both of them are. They need to figure out like if one of those guys can play. If not, we got to go now deep on the depth chart. Evan Pryor, he's out for the season with an injury that he had over the summer. He hadn't played in one game, so they're sort of already like right now they're in this precarious spot with their running back depth. Obviously, Jackson Smith and Jigba has been on a milk carton all year, and also C.J. Stroud. His counting stats are way above the phylum of where his actual play has been. Like if you compare his TDINT ratio to his PFF big time throw against turnover worthy play ratio, the even though his counting stats have not dropped off, the latter has those sort of advanced metrics, whatever. He's putting the ball up for grabs more often this year. The big time throws, that hasn't fallen off. It's that the turnover worthy plays have doubled. And when they play a good defense, that's where it's going to manifest. Maryland's defense has gotten a little bit better. But can they take full advantage of that to the point where they could upset them? I'm not sure about that. But because of the depreciation there on the skill set, with the skill positions of Ohio State and getting line value on this game, my line being Ohio State minus 21.6. So I'm showing some serious line value on Maryland. I don't trust this Ohio State team anyway. Definitely hard lean towards Maryland.
And this is too early, this will be something you'll cover midweek, but do you think there could be any lean to the under at 64 that's currently lined up for this game?
Potentially. Yeah, potentially. I got to get in there and handicap that one. But yeah, I mean, Ohio State, the explosive offenses that you think of in your mind from these past couple years, I think when they get resistance from an opposing defense, that's where the whole thing comes down. So, I mean, can Maryland put that up? Maryland also has the good passing offense, but obviously Ohio State's got some guys in the secondary. So, yeah, we'll get into that handicap.
Tell you what, if we hadn't seen that Justin Jefferson catch this weekend, everyone might have just been talking about Marvin Harrison. That might have just been the play all weekend on that footwork he had on the sideline. Yeah. Ridiculously good weekend of catching, by the way. I love me some receivers, and I love me some Marvin Harrison. We've got Illinois playing up against Michigan, number 3 Michigan, 10-0. Michigan is coming off of a 34-3 win over Nebraska. Illinois was 21 going into last week, is knocked off of there. What do we think on this game here for Michigan? 17-point favorite Michigan is up against Illinois. Again, does that line seem a little low? I guess you're going to tell us on your adjusted line here.
Definitely does. My line on that is Michigan minus 21. Hard lean towards Michigan in that one. The weird thing about it is Illinois is the team that has the injury concerns in this game, so it shouldn't be depressed that way. Illinois' most important player, Chase Brown, their running back, their star running back, who's already amassed over 3,000 career yards, and I think this year he might even be leading the nation in rushing, or at least he was heading into last week. He got injured at the very end of their upset loss to Purdue. Illinois is already the bloom is sort of off that rose these past couple weeks. People are starting to figure out how to play Illinois, and they've taken some of these losses. Now they lose their hammer back. Brett Bielema would not give us any indication of Chase Brown's status after that game, so I don't have any information outside of that. Outside of Chase Brown suffered a right leg injury that didn't look great. He needed help getting off the field, didn't return, obviously. So, I mean, if Illinois is out Chase Brown in this game, they are up Craps Creek without a paddle. It's the one thing that they could use to get their offensive efficiency against Michigan potentially. Without him, it's like it's Tommy DeVito without any skill talent around him. So I don't even know how Illinois is going to move the ball at that point. And the Michigan offense, we're starting to trust him more and more. Blake Corum, obviously next level stud. Edwards is a stud. JJ McCarthy, I'm starting to trust him more and more, unlocking some more explosive plays out of the passing game than we've seen in the past. Definitely a hard lean towards Michigan, and I'm very surprised that line is under 21 because that's what my adjusted line is.
This might be one of those then we want to grab right now. Might want to grab even if you're going to play a little bit.
At 17. Absolutely. Yeah, because you get it at the key number. And the market isn't going to bat this, or I mean, they're not going to pull it under 17. So at the 17 number, that's the buy sign for sure.
Okay. SEC matchup number 5, Tennessee, who's 9-1, going up against South Carolina, 6-4. Good SEC matchup. Tennessee has been a good payday the last couple of weeks. So what say you on Tennessee?
Yeah, and especially because Josh Heupel, now we know that he's going to put the style points on at the end. So that's something you got to, consider both with when you're handicapping the sides of the Tennessee games going forward, but also the totals. Josh Heupel is going to be looking to score on every single drive, even if he's up 30 points at the, in the end in the fourth quarter. The Missouri game, I found it so funny. They were calling timeouts at the end, and then they scored their last touchdown with like 20 seconds left. Tennessee did, just trying to put the style points on. You're going to see that in positions where Tennessee has an opportunity to do it because it's in their best interest, right? Like, I mean, they need to make the case because they don't really control their own destiny with that. So obviously you have to win out, but you also have to win by the style points to improve your odds of getting in if that scenario presents itself. So, I mean, that's on the one side. With South Carolina, last week, it wasn't necessarily they disappointed me. It's that they lied to me. Shane Beamer said on Tuesday that Marshawn Lloyd, their star running back, was fully healthy. He had returned to practice. He was going to play on Saturday. And then he doesn't play against Florida. Not only that, Christian Beal-Smith didn't play either. South Carolina, like now you would think, because Beamer said that, now that's a week plus ago, and stuff like that. You would think now that Marshawn Lloyd would be ready for this game. But again, like after Beamer lied to me last week, I'm going to have to do a little bit more digging on that. If South Carolina, or I should say when South Carolina does not have Marshawn Lloyd, their offense comes way down. Spencer Rattler cannot do it on his own. He sort of gets flabbergasted when he has to, and everything's on him or whatever. But South Carolina, when they have Marshawn Lloyd, their running game is really, really good. It would be the one sort of knife that they can bring to this gunfight against Tennessee if Lloyd's playing again. But if Lloyd's out and Beal-Smith is out again, this is a real problem for South Carolina. So it's a status check on South Carolina handicap.
Right now, my friends, we have got some big boy Pac-12 action coming up this weekend. This is what I'm all about. Always born and raised around all these teams out here. ASU never does anything, but I've got family and alma mater for Cal and UCLA and whatnot. And the big dog, we've got number 8 USC, who's 9-1, going up against number 12 UCLA with an 8-2 record. This should be a good one. What do you got on this Pac-12 action, Thor?
I got to lean towards UCLA because of where this line is. It feels like, the market, they didn't want to believe in USC. They didn't want to believe in USC. They didn't want to believe in USC. But now they get this opportunity where, USC only has the one loss, and now UCLA looked bad last week. It's like, oh, now let's everybody believe in USC. I think this line is off from where it ought to be. My adjusted line in that game is USC minus 1.3. I basically think it should be pretty close to a pick 'em. Whereas the market is 5.5 is what I saw before, where they had dropped it. USC by 5.5 on the road. I'm taking UCLA, and I understand why people have some trepidation with that after what we saw of UCLA last week. UCLA had just been rolling coming in, and then I don't know if they overlooked Arizona or what was going on there, but they obviously had a very poor showing in there, and then USC held serve. So the line, the discrepancy doesn't really surprise me. But if you think UCLA is not showing up for this game, welcoming in Lincoln Riley and the USC Trojans, they're the bad guys. They're the villains. UCLA will be absolutely locked in, and probably all the more so because of the loss to Arizona. We already knew that the Arizona game for UCLA, it was a look-ahead spot. What was UCLA looking forward to? It was this game against USC. This is their Super Bowl. So for me, I'm going to be back in the Bruins with that one, getting these, what I feel like is excessive points for the home dog.
And this is the highest over-under total of any of the top 25 games, 25 teams here, with I currently see it at 73.5 points, which looks like it's about 10 points higher than any other game I'm seeing right now, Thor.
Yeah, and both these defenses are atrocious, and both these offenses are awesome. I'm almost surprised it ain't even a little bit higher. We've seen some of these games. The past weekend, what was it? Wake Forest against UNC, and then we had Washington against Oregon, where you had like totals in the mid 70s or high 70s, whatever. I would have expected that total to drop in the mid 70s or maybe even the higher 70s, and maybe by kickoff, that's where it'll be.
The other Pac-12 action we've got is number 10 Utah and now number 12 Oregon. Both teams are 8-2. They're both 6-1 in the Pac-12. Oregon coming off of a huge upset. Washington 37-34. Utah's coming off of a 42-7 win over Stanford. So these teams both inside the top 15. Utah, Oregon, what have you got on it?
I lean Utah in that one. Utah is a team that can travel for sure. Oregon, they're getting back to home here. My line on this game is Oregon minus 0.6 points. So basically a pick 'em. In the market right now, it's Oregon minus 2.5. I'm going to be, we talked about some of the games where I'm pulling the trigger now. This is one where I'm going to wait a little bit because at the 2.5 line, if that thing toggles to 3 or maybe even above, we'll see. Obviously, you get more value on Utah if you wait, and that Utah's the side that I want in that one. Utah has looked very good in recent weeks, and it's sort of gone under the radar because of some of the opponents that they played, and also because they took the two losses before. But they're playing really, really well. Cam Rising, who had been out before, he's back. The running game now, they're starting to do different stuff with it. Where before they were just giving all the usage to Tavian Thomas. Now they've got sort of a stable of backs, disparate skill sets and stuff like that. Sort of diversifying the skill sets in the backfield. It's made their offense a little bit more interesting. And I like the Utah defense, of course. And I feel like Kyle Whittingham and crew are going to be able to solve the puzzle that is Bo Nix, which some of these crappier Pac-12 defenses could not. But Bo Nix did not have the game that everybody was expecting against Washington's dog crap defense yesterday. Bo Nix, like the final stats were okay for him, but like against that rough shot Washington defense, you just expected every single drive for Oregon to score. It was obviously not that way. And when you think about Bo Nix, his history in the SEC, whenever he was playing the defenses that jumped up, that's where you would get what I refer to as bad Bo. I think this might be a bad Bo spot. There's some people in the market, I think that Oregon's going to bounce back from the showing against Washington. And obviously Washington, they had a bit of a trump card in that matchup of the Washington passing attack going against the shoddy Oregon secondary. But Utah can throw the ball as well. They're not as pass happy as Washington for sure, but I do think they're going to have success with that. I also think they're going to be able to take advantage of the Oregon defensive front in terms of hammering them. I'm taking the away dog in that one.
If you saw this get to Oregon minus 3.5 and you got the hook, would this be a pounce on Utah if you got the hook?
Smash Utah.
Okay, yeah. Like your face said it all. Your face, like you almost couldn't smile. You're like, smash.
Yeah, I mean, and that's what I'm waiting for. With it at 2.5, the great thing, as someone who believes in Utah in this spot, you have that leeway, right? Because this thing could drop to 2, it could drop to 1.5. I don't care, or 1. It doesn't matter that way. But if it goes anywhere, if it toggles the other way, now we're in business because now we're getting more value every half point it jumps up at 3, at 3.5, 4, maybe. I mean, who knows? We don't know what the market's going to do with this game. But absolutely, if you believe in Utah in this one, you wait on this one. If you believe in Oregon, you bet it now. While it's beneath the 3.
All right, the one team that did make a move, or the number one team to make a move inside the top 10, was LSU. They moved up to 6. LSU is going to be hosting UAB, but LSU is only a 14.5 point favorite at home. LSU's 8-2. UAB is 5-5. This stinks. Why does this smell? Why does this smell of only 2 touchdowns for the 6th best team in the nation versus a 5-5 UAB, Thor?
Well, so UAB, they're a team, so they were awesome, and they've been awesome since the program came back. But when they've been good this season, up until when their starting quarterback Dylan Hopkins got hurt when they were playing Western Kentucky, and then their offense immediately went into the tank, and it remained in the tank until Dylan Hopkins came back this past week. But they lost all 3 of those games, Western Kentucky, and then the 2 after that with Jacob Zeno, their backup quarterback, starting. Jacob Zeno he doesn't scare anyone in the pocket. He makes mistakes. He doesn't have pocket awareness. He doesn't have accuracy, etc. But with Dylan, you add Dylan Hopkins, you get the passing efficiency and a bit of passing explosion out of him as well to go with the Dwayne McBride-led rushing attack, which is one of the G5's best. And UAB, I mean, this going back several years since they reinstituted their program, they always have one of the G5's best defenses. They're a tough team to play. I'm not going to say that they're live on the road here, but you would be remiss if you didn't say that LSU has not looked good. Last week they didn't look good when, against Arkansas. Arkansas, a team that was playing their backup quarterback, KJ Jefferson unexpectedly, inactive heading into that game. Arkansas had to start Malik Hornsby, a guy that they trust so little in the pocket that they moved his positions over the offseason, and then they had to move him back because the other quarterback Arkansas brought in that they thought was going to be their backup quarterback, Cade Fortin, he can't throw, and he's a pocket passer. He don't move. So it's like Arkansas just didn't have anything, whatever. And LSU just sort of pulled by them in this, one of the worst games to watch that you'll ever see, mostly because Brian Kelly's a good coach. I mean, it was a classic letdown spot. LSU did play like crap. I mean, they absolutely played to that letdown spot moniker. But they were just able to pull it out because that's what Brian Kelly's done in some of these things. But laying over 14.5 points, you wonder if this LSU team's starting to get tired. Beyond last week's performance, whatever. Before that they had all these marquee games, and LSU also at this point getting ready for the stretch run. Are they even capable of putting margin on an opponent that's a game underdog? I don't know about that. That's one where I'm going to be investigating that one pretty closely and trying to get the gauge of UAB's psychology of this game. Is this game that they view as we're going to throw the kitchen sink in, or UAB sitting at 5-5? They need the one win to get into the bowl. Are they going to sort of pull it back in this one and then put all the eggs in the basket of the last game in order to get bowl eligible? We need to parse sort of the quotes we're getting from the coaches and what we're hearing from the beat reporters. And that's what that handicap's going to be about for me.
And last week, by the way, the LSU game, I think, was one of the more heavy bet sharp plays on Arkansas, as LSU, I think, was as a 4.5-point favorite, and they obviously could not cover in that just offensive slog of a game.
Against those crappy Arkansas backup quarterbacks. Yeah, but it was a bad spot, but they got it done.
They did get it done. No cover. Yeah. Miami coming up against Clemson, 10-0 Clemson. They've kind of been up and down as far as where we're on the bets. Where are you on the bets? It's a 19.5-point favorite for Clemson right now. They're 9-1, 7-0 in ACC action. Miami, though, is 3-3, a 5-5 team coming in, almost a 20 dog here. What do you think?
It's a fair line. My line on that game is Clemson minus 17.9, but you have to factor in all the injuries we've seen on the Miami side. They have all these different positions that have been decimated all year. It's been a slog for Miami, and I think Miami's about ready to pack it in. So this might be the game for Clemson to just absolutely flog this decimated Miami team. That's what, to me, explains the 1.5 discrepancy between my line and what the Vegas line is right now. For me, that one would be Clemson or pass. If Miami if they were even capable of rising up in one of these matchups, we would have seen it by now. I do not expect Clemson for Miami to shock the world and keep this one close or put a scare into Clemson.
If you guys are looking for free picks, player props, or breakdowns on almost every game that college football's got to offer, you can join Thor and Mike Farrell for Game Day Live, presented by DraftKings, each and every Saturday starting at 10:30 a.m. Eastern. If you got questions you need answered, our team of experts are going to be live for 90 minutes of nonstop action leading up to kickoff. So join the live stream, toss your questions in the chat, get your answers, and make sure you guys are subscribed to the Betting Pros YouTube channel right here, so you guys are going to be notified and turn on the notifications of any time new shows are in, because this is just the look ahead. You're going to get all the full breakdowns coming up this week. And don't take college football for granted. It's almost gone. It's almost away from you. You only got a couple more full-on weeks, and you're going to have bowl season. The next thing you know it, you're going to be trying to figure out if you're going to be, betting on Olympic women's hockey, or you're going to be betting on table tennis. I mean, college football, get it in while you can. So make sure you follow Thor on Twitter at ThorKU. You can follow me on Twitter at IsItTheWelsh if you would fancy. And make sure you follow Betting Pros at Betting Pros on the Twitter and the social media. Friends, that's all that we have for you for the look ahead. We'll talk to you guys next week right here on Betting Pros College Football Look Ahead. Goodbye until then, friends.